Yes, so I think after a long time you'll have a bio class. We did not have a bio session after April or something, I guess, right?
Ma'am, in Poda they started reproduction and all.
Yes, yes. You all have started reproduction. Yes, I'm aware of it. So after this, we will schedule how do organisms reproduce. Okay.
In maths, we have started quadratic equations.
Acha, okay. Can you just
Same
send it
in
on
syllabus.
that group? Can you just send it on the group so that when we are scheduling, we'll take all that into note. Okay. Okay. So after life processes, this is the next. You could call it the next or the link between the different processes, or the only system which was left out in life processes is covered in this chapter, which is basically the nervous system, right? So this chapter completely deals about the nervous system. And just like life processes, you had, we spoke about mainly about humans with one or two examples from other organisms, right? Only particular cases. Same thing here. This will also deal mostly with the control and coordination or the nervous system in humans and plants. We have a bit of plant section here. So we'll be talking about the different plant hormones, which is a completely new thing for you, and how do they work? Like, what is the system in plants? Do they also have the same kind of nervous tissue like animals? Or if not, what do they do? Right? So, plants and humans both combined. In the human section, first you will talk about nervous system in general. What is it made up of? The different organs or the tissues, cells which are involved, right? Reflex action, the main part of the chapter. And of course, after that, we will be discussing about endocrine glands, or which is nothing but hormones again, but in humans, right? So that's all is there in this chapter. It is not that long like life processes, like it's relatively a short chapter, but uh, according to me, I think most of the terms are new for you, most of the processes are new for you, and yeah, this question has a lot of chance of MCQ questions, right? Direct questions, but MCQ based. So this chapter becomes important from MCQ point of view because every sentence they can literally form an MCQ and ask you, right? Yeah, this chapter was actually not there last year. They had removed this completely, being a lengthy one, right? And being a new one, right? Because the others you need it in you need to know how do organisms reproduce to do heredity and evolution. You need to know life processes because without that there is, I mean, there is, you won't understand anything in the coming years if you take up bio. So they couldn't remove those chapters, so they removed this one because this is isolated, right? But this time it is there, and this time since you all have MCQ based tests, this chapter becomes really important, right? Okay, let us start. So basically, control and coordination refers to how are your movements or your actions controlled. That's what control stands for, right? How your actions or movements are controlled. Versus coordination is how all the different organs or how do few of the organs which are involved in the control area, how do they come together and how do they help in the movement. That becomes coordination, right? Coordination is basically a team or a group of people or a group of uh, ideally people. Here it would be referring to organs. How do they come together and how do they help, or how do they bring about this action, right? So this is all the entire chapter is about. Okay. Yeah, so I think you all are making notes for the other subjects, right? For chemistry, physics, etc. Same thing, you can make notes for this chapter and this class as well. So I'll tell you what you need to write down, because we will have a lot of definitions and important words coming up, right? Okay, so whatever needs to be taken down, I will let you know. But in the meantime, you can be ready with your books, pen, pencils, etc. Right? Okay. Okay, so this is the introduction part of the chapter, which is basically a huge paragraph in the NCERT, which has been condensed to only these points, right? That entire paragraph talks about only three important points, which are these, right? So first question is movement always a result of growth, right? Can anybody tell me, is movement always a result of growth?
Ma'am,
No, ma'am. It's
No. Yeah, Nikki, tell me.
we had done all of this in last class, right?
Yes. I think you were not there. Before we started the class, I just mentioned that I would be covering all this again because the other batch has not done it, and then we would be
Okay.
proceeding ahead.
Yeah.
Okay. 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 So coming back to our
to ask
questions.
something.
Yes, Anirban?
And do we have to again write the same thing?
No. It's okay. It's okay. You don't need to write. I'll tell you when you need to write. I'll tell the Malad batch when you can start writing. Right? Okay. Okay. So is movement always a result of growth? Yes or no? Coming back to our question.
No, ma'am.
No, right? Yeah. So yeah, the answer is already here actually. So movement is not always a result of growth. It can be due to either growth or it can be due to a change in environment. Okay, what does change in environment refer to? Change in environment could be anything. It could be the fact that you are looking for food, or maybe you are looking for shelter, right? Or it could be simply that you are trying to perform some activity which makes you feel happy, right? Maybe something like playing, dancing, things like that, running around, right? That doesn't really achieve, or that doesn't really do anything for growth, right? But it's for your mental health, or it is for releasing happy hormones, things like that, right? Dancing, yoga, uh, running, playing, etc. Right? You play because it makes you happy, right? So all those also will come under change in environment. So change in environment is not always bad, right? It doesn't have to be always bad. It can be any small change, right? Food, shelter, running around, things like that. Okay. So movement can also be an attempt by living organisms to use their changes in the environment to their advantage, right? So basically you are trying to make best use of that movement to your advantage, right? What does that mean? Again, you can take classic example of this, or like I just mentioned, you are playing, right? You, before the pandemic, I am sure most of you would used to be going out to play, right, regularly, right? So that is an example of a movement which we solely do for fun, right? We don't really it's not something which helps our life process, or it's not something which is essential, right? But essential as in biologically, or regarding for growth or something like that. But it is something which you get you feel happy after doing it, so you play around or you dance, etc. Whereas things like this are necessary, like a cow eating grass, cow moving in search of food, that becomes a necessary movement, because if it's not able to find grass, the cow is going to eventually starve and die, right? So this becomes an example of a necessary movement. So in so these four pictures here are all examples of movements, where first is movement in plants, right? If you notice, this plant will always grow in the direction of sunlight no matter how you plant it, right? You can keep the pot, or if you have a pot at home, you can try it. You can keep it vertical like this for a day. You'll notice that the plant would still grow in the direction of sunlight. It won't grow in a vertical line or in a horizontal line like this, right? Okay, so this is what it's showing. And plants can't really move much. Like, the plant is not going to get out of the soil and take a walk and come back, right? It can only move its aerial parts, or it can only change its direction of growth, things like that. Okay, this is another, the second picture is again an example of a movement where suppose you are, let's say you are in a dimly lit theater, right? You watched a movie in the day and you step out of the theater. That time the sunlight really hits your eyes, isn't it? So you'll immediately cover your eyes and you'll say that, oh, it's too much light. So that's also a change in your environment, which is why you're moving your hand and you're trying to protect your eyes, right? Okay, these two we discussed. This is playing, and this is animals moving for food, right? These are some of the examples. So this entire slide, or this, yeah, these 2 3 points which are there here are all from the introduction part itself, that long paragraph which is there in the NCERT textbook, right? This is all it talks about. Basically, they are trying to introduce the concept of movement here. So then we will talk about how movements are controlled, right? Okay, okay, yes. Like here, the movement, so each movement is carefully controlled, right? And each kind of a change in the environment evokes an appropriate movement in response. Evokes basically means leads to. Okay, if you don't know the meaning, you can write leads to. So each kind of a change, so all these movements is carefully controlled means, even take the example of this lady here. Let me just go back. Yeah, if you take the example of the second picture here, where the lady has brought her hand in front of her eyes to protect her eyes from the sunlight, right? So this movement is carefully controlled, wherein there are signals which are being sent from the brain to your hand to be moved there in that location, right? So that is the meaning of carefully controlled. Okay. All living organisms respond and react to environmental factors. Like some of them are given here. These are some of the examples, right? Like light, heat, cold, sound, smell, taste, pressure, etc. And this response involves coordination of many organs in our body. So this is the meaning of control and coordination, basically. So many many organs would coordinate here, being, for example, if you're trying to move your hand in front of your eye, your brain, your hand muscles, etc., all of them, nervous tissue, they are all involved in the passing of the signal, right? So that's how they would all be coordinating and passing the signal. Okay, this is also part of the introduction itself. Okay, now we will start with the theory part. Yes. So from this slide onwards, you can start taking down notes, right? These are all important points whichever are written on the PPT. Okay. So first we'll be discussing about the nervous system in animals or in humans in general, right? Okay. So the main parts of the nervous system are brain, spinal cord, and nerves, right? So these three form the main parts, or main central functioning parts, right? Apart from this, you also have other helping organs or helping tissues, etc. Some of these are sense organs, right? Sense organs help in the functioning of nervous tissue, right? How many sense organs are there?
5.
Ma'am,
The
two.
5
5. Yeah, and what are they?
Skin, tongue, ears,
ear, nose, tongue,
eyes,
skin,
and nose.
Right? So write this also next to the sorry. Right, these five next to this point itself, right? So these are your five sense organs, which is skin, ear, nose, eyes, and tongue, right? So they also help in the functioning of the nervous system. How do they help? Is because whatever change in the environment happens, right? Suppose take the same example of uh, the light or the sunlight hitting your eyes, right? So your eyes will detect it that it's too much, right? And it will send a signal to the brain saying that please do something about it. So either you will shut your eyes or you'll bring something like your hand or maybe some kind of cover. You'll wear a cap or you'll bring your hand in front or you'll go back into an area which is moderately lit or it's not having direct sunlight, right? Same thing, you can take examples for each of them and you can say, for example, when you smell something burning, right? So your nose is detecting that. When you eat something bitter, like if you're eating karela, right? How do you know it is bitter? The tongue is telling you that this is very bitter, you can't eat it, right? Same way for ear, when you hear loud noise, when you hear the sound of firecrackers, right, you jump, isn't it? So your ear is passing on the message to the brain that, oh, there's some kind of danger here, we need to move away, things like that. Okay, yeah, so they help in the functioning of the nervous system. And different sense organs contain receptors for detecting different stimuli. Okay, so now you have new words here. One is receptor and second one is stimuli, and both the definitions are given here in these blue boxes, right? Important, very important terms, so make sure you're noting it down. Okay, receptor is basically a cell or a group of cells in a sense organ which is sensitive to a particular type of stimulus, right? So these group of cells which are present in these five sense organs will tell you or will pass on the message saying that something is too much or there is a change in the environment or there you need to uh, move yourself away or you need to move a part of your body from there because you are in danger, right? So these cells are the main people who will uh, the main, yeah, who is going to tell you that you need to move or there is some kind of change happening. Receptor, basically you can remember this word as receive, right? Anything you get, you receive a phone call, you receive a signal, you receive gifts, right? Which is basically you're getting something, right? So these, you can remember the word receive and the word receptor, right? To remember, can connect the two. So they basically they receive the stimulus or they receive the change in the environment and then they pass it on saying that okay, there is a change, we need to do something, right? And that change which is happening is what is called a stimulus, right? The correct word or the uh, proper term for the change word in this case is what is called a stimulus or stimuli. Stimuli is when multiple changes are happening, you call it stimuli. Okay, stimulus is usually singular. Okay. So it's nothing but an agent or a sudden change in the external or internal environment which causes a change in the organism or any of its body part, right? Here internal environment would refer to something happening inside your body, right? Something happening inside itself, which means that suppose you're injured somewhere, if you have an internal injury, right? You can take the example of uh, um, okay, you can take the example of maybe let's say appendicitis, right? So you have this small vestigial organ in your alimentary canal which is called the appendix, right? It's called the appendix. So sometimes it is a storehouse for all good bacteria, right? It's actually the organ which would give rise to the tail, but since we have evolved, we don't really need it, right? So that's why it's called a vestigial organ. So what happens is sometimes this organ it inflames due to various reasons and you have severe stomach pains and it has to be removed, right? So that is like a change in the internal environment. The pain, whenever you have pain in some part of your body, it's basically your body trying to tell you that there's something wrong here, do something about it, right? So that's the internal environment they're talking about here. An external environment would be anything happening outside your body, right? And here an agent means a small change, like suppose I bring a hot iron near your hand, or if I bring a hot cup near your hand, right? That would be an agent, right? You're bringing something, external factor. Okay, so when it is just a small change, it's called an agent. When it's a sudden change in the environment, that would be, examples would be when you're moving from a theater to direct sunlight, right? That's a change in the complete environment. Or suppose, what can I say? Yeah, it starts raining. That's also a change in the environment, right? Okay, yeah, ठीक है. Okay. Have you taken this slide down? Taken this down. Yes, no, yes. Okay. Only Vasudha has answered. What about others? Taken it down? Yes. ठीक है. Okay, cool. 3 of you say done. Good, good. Okay. Make sure you're writing it down because after class you are supposed to send your notes on the group. Right? So whoever is not writing it down, you'll be in trouble. Okay. ठीक है. Let's go ahead.
Wait a minute.
हाँ, okay.
Okay, done.
Good. Okay, so now there are different types of receptors based on where they are found, right? Or based on what they detect. There are these main types of receptors. Again, important table, note it down, right? I'll tell you how to remember them easily because they are all new words, right? So photoreceptors are basically cells which detect light and they are present in eyes, right? You can remember, break down this word into photo and receptors. Photo is anything which is with reference to light, right? Like photosynthesis, photography, right? All those are related to light. So photo basically means light. These receptors would be present in your eyes. Okay, same thing, break down phono and receptors. Phono is for sound, telephone, mobile phone, right? That's how the name phone came. Phono is for sound, it is present in the ears. These two are difficult to remember, right? Because there is no connection as such to help you remember olfactory and gustatory, because no other words for smell and taste are called olfactory or gustatory, right? So olfactory is always for smell, which is be in the nose, right? Whereas gustatory is for taste, which is in the tongue, right? Olfactory, I think you'll remember its nose because in acid bases salts, right? You would have done
It's a
one.
type of indicator.
Yes, yes. Olfactory indicators are nothing but indicators which you can use to detect acids or bases based on the smell, right? Like vanilla bean. I think it was there in yesterday's question also. One question.
Ma'am, there was a question about it today also.
Oh, it was there today also. Good, good. Good thing. Then we give it in the paper. Yeah, that question is actually one of a HOTS question which comes very frequently. The vanilla bean one, which is why I'm also telling it again here. Right? Okay. Okay, so olfactory is with reference to smell, gustatory is with reference to taste, and there is thermo, which is either heat or cold. So thermo actually stands for both hot and cold at the same time. So it could be either of the two. And these indicators are usually present, or these receptors are usually present in your skin. Okay, thermo is, you can remember as uh, yeah, I think last class one of them gave an example, thermometer, right? You measure temperature of your body, and then you have this flask at home. If you would have seen, There is this a jug like, I don't know what's it called. I think flask only. Where you carry hot liquids in, tea or maybe just hot water or something like that. I think you get it for cold water also now, right? So that's called a thermos. That's how the name has come. Thermo is anything for heat or cold. ठीक है? Okay. I hope you've noted this down. Done? Done. Only Shakti is done. Others?
Done.
Done. Okay. This is frequently asked as an MCQ, huh? So, okay. ठीक है. Okay. Going ahead. Good, good. Yes. Yeah, so keep replying that once you're done so that I know that we can go ahead, and I know that you all are here and not asleep also, right? Okay. Okay, now we'll come to the nervous tissue in general. Right. So in grade 9, we studied about cell, right? Cell being the structural and functional unit of life. Everything starts from a cell, isn't it? Like that, neurons are also cells, or these are neurons are basically what are called nerve cells, right? So they are the structural and functional unit of the nervous system. Okay, so each nervous fibers, nervous tissue, organs, etc. are all basically composed of only neurons, right? This is how a neuron looks like. This is the same diagram as is there in the NCERT textbook. Okay, this is a commonly asked diagram. This chapter is also diagram based, I mean diagram intensive, because you have options of being asked diagram of neuron, diagram of brain, and diagram of reflex arc. Only three, right?
Ma'am,
Yes.
ma'am, I just wanted to ask that since we are going to have an MCQs test, so they will just give us diagram and ask us which part it is, right, in MCQs?
Uh, okay, I'm not so sure about how they would translate a diagram to an MCQ question. They can either ask you to label it, or they can come up with some interesting technique. So I'm also not sure. Yeah, MCQ based as in it would be 90% MCQs. Definitely there are some amount of long answers or 2-3 mark questions which will be asked. Some amount of subjective questions they have left, but 90% of it would be MCQ. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Second thing to know about neuron is that it is the longest cell in the human body. Again, favorite MCQ question. Which is the longest cell in the human body? It's always neuron, right? And it has three main parts. What are the three main parts? The cell body, right? Dendrites and axon. Okay. The location or the little bit information about the structure and the function of these three parts is there in the next slide. We'll just come to that. Don't need to draw this diagram now. You can draw it at home later. We need to take time, right? Okay, one more thing to note here is that there are 3 or 4 more points about a neuron which is there in your chapter notes, right? These are these cells. There is one thing called Schwann cells. There's something called myelin sheath, and there is something called, this is H, right? Nodes of Ranveer. Yeah, it is. You can remember it as Ranveer Singh, right? But just be careful about the spelling. It's Ranvier. Okay. Okay. So there are these 3-4 extra points given in the chapter notes. Schwann cells are basically cells which are present in the axon itself, right? They are present in some parts here and there. You don't need to know their function. You don't need to know their location. But I'm just telling you that these are also terms related to the neuron. In case you get a question and you are confused as to which part does these words come from, right? That's why I'm just telling you. Okay, next thing is the myelin sheath. So the So the axon has this kind of a covering, okay? So that covering is what is called the myelin sheath. Or if you would have heard the word sheath before, sheath is basically anything which is like a covering. Okay, you have sheaths for swords, daggers, those kind of things, right? That's what a sheath is. And you have something called nodes of Ranveer. So in between these places, right, between these blue boxes you can see here, there are nodes present. Those nodes are called nodes of Ranveer, Ranveer being the person who discovered them, right? Direct name after that person. Schwann cells are also named after the scientist Schwann who discovered them, right? But at this stage, you don't need to know anything more about these 3 points, so that's why I'm not discussing anything more about it. Just to make you aware that these 3 words are also related to the neuron itself, right? Okay. Okay, now we will go on to functions. Right. So components of a neuron, the 3 main components are cell body, dendrites, and axon. Cell body is also called cyton, again important, right? What does cell body have? It has abundant cytoplasm, right, which is called a neuroplasm, and which contains Nissls granules. Again, this is just a word you need to know because sometimes they ask as a HOTS question that which of the following does not contain Nissls granules, something like that, right? They don't, you don't really need to know the function or the purpose of it, but yeah, Nissls granules are present in the cell body. That's sufficient, right? Okay, what else? They have a relatively large spherical nucleus, right, and is also mainly concerned with the metabolic maintenance and growth. So basically, all the growth or all the reactions, whatever repair, maintenance, all those kind of work which happens in the cell body itself, right? And the functions are mentioned in orange color, right? So whatever is in orange and in bold is basically the function. That is the most important part you must remember, right? So what is the function of the cell body? It receives nerve impulses from dendrites and transmits them to axon. Okay. Okay. Dendrites are basically several short tapering, much branched protoplasmic processes, right? So they, if this is your cell body, I'll just draw it here. These are the dendrites, right? You have dendrites here. There is a nucleus here. You have dendrites here, right? So they are called protoplasmic processes because they are nothing but the extension of the protoplasm itself, right? That's why that word, stretching out from the cell body. So what is their function? Again, same, that they would take up the electric impulse and they would pass it on to the cell body, right? Yeah. So this impulse actually comes in from here. Let me draw it in red. The impulse comes here first in the dendrites. From the dendrite, it moves into the cell body. And suppose this is your axon. Let me just draw axon here. Right? So this is one. Then it goes to the cell body. And then it moves to the axon, which is 3. Right? Don't worry, we have a small video where this process is given in detail. Okay. Coming to axon, it is a single very long cylindrical nerve fiber, right, arising from the cell body. Correct. Okay. At its terminal end, axon is highly branched. Axon terminals are often knob-like, and these may end in nerve fibers that form synapses with dendrites of other neurons. Right. What is synapses? We will come to that in the next slide. We have the definition, etc. here. Okay. And the function, like I said, the axon conducts nerve impulses away from the cell body, right? It is going this side, so to take it away and pass it on to the axon terminals and then the next neuron. Okay, have you copied this slide?
Yes.
Just a minute.
Done. Okay. Okay, I will just go back 1 minute to the previous slide to just show you. Oh, yes. Okay. So these are what are called as axon terminals, right? So there are different words for them, and as you would notice, they are bulb like or they are knob like. Okay, so the different words for them are axon terminal, or they are also called as nerve endings, or they are also called as nerve terminals. Okay, they all mean the same thing. ठीक है? Okay. Okay, now we come to what is a synapse and what is a neuromuscular junction. Okay, so for that I will draw a small diagram here, right, for you to understand. Okay. Suppose this is one neuron. Forgive my diagram. Okay, right, and these are your axon terminals. Then there is a next neuron here, right? Same, there are dendrites, there is a nucleus, cell body, right? There is an axon, and there is nerve terminals. Okay, so like this, there is one complete chain of neurons everywhere there in your body, right? Because there is nervous tissue runs throughout. So wherever the nervous tissue is there, it all come down to a chain of neurons like this. Okay, so now what happens is that a nerve impulse is taken up, let's say from here. Okay, and it is passed on to the cell body, and then it travels all the way through the axon to the nerve endings, right? And now what happens is very interesting, because there is a gap. Okay, there is a gap between the nerve ending here and the next neuron. Okay, they are not really connected end to end, but there are always gaps in between. Okay, and this gap is what is called a synapse. Okay, so the nerve impulse will travel all the way to the axon ending, and then it jumps on to the next neuron, right? And how does it exactly jump is what I'll explain in a bit, right? How does it actually get transmitted to the next one, I'll explain in a bit, right? But this is exactly what is synapse. So synapse is the gap between two neurons where the nerve impulses passes from one neuron to another in one direction, right? Okay. Many students usually make the mistake of calling the nerve endings as the synapse, because while learning itself you may miss out on the fact that it's actually the gap. So you must be very clear that a synapse is nothing but the gap. Okay, it's not a structure, it's not what you say, an extension, it's not a vesicle, but it's a gap. Okay, so highlight the word wherever you are writing this definition, just star mark it and keep. Okay. Okay, so another here, as you can see, again this is also a diagram which is from the NCERT book itself. Okay, yeah, again not usually asked to draw. Yeah, they might ask you to draw a synapse, but that you can draw in a simplified structure, right? Okay, so this box here, or this small diagram here, is where they are showing you the synapse. So this gap here basically is the synapse. This gap here, which I'm drawing in green, is what is called the synapse, right? And then you will notice all these kind of clefts and troughs, or up and down folds kind of structures, right? Those kind of folds in the gap itself are what are called as synaptic cleft. Again, you should just be aware that if there is a word called synaptic cleft, right, they don't ask you questions on it. Okay, they ask you questions on synapse. Okay, yeah. And one more thing to note here is that the first neuron, right, or the neuron before this synapse, is what is called as the presynaptic neuron, or the presynaptic neuron, right? Or presynaptic terminal, as is mentioned in this picture here, right? The terminal, why? Because this is a enlarged image of an axon terminal itself. Okay, and the next neuron or the neuron after the synapse is what is usually called a postsynaptic neuron, or in this case they are just showing you the membrane, right? So postsynaptic membrane. So this is what it basically means. Again, they don't really ask you questions on this, but I'm just helping you to understand this diagram here so that it doesn't feel like Greek and Latin, right? Okay. And there are these small vesicles. Vesicles are basically any structure which holds, which is like a temporary bag-like thing. If I were to give you an analogy, you can think of vesicles as a bag. Like you go to a grocery store and you're buying, let's say, potatoes, right? You carry the potatoes in the bag till you come back home, right? So vesicles act as a bag itself. They are sort of bag-like structures which carry stuff which needs to be moved from one place to another, right? Okay, so that's what that job of vesicle is. Okay, so I think we've covered everything which is there in the synapse diagram. Sarcolemma is basically nothing but a membrane. Okay, sarco refers to anything which is a cell, and lemma means membrane. So this is basically just a membrane they're showing you here. Okay. Okay, now that we've covered that, we'll come to neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular junction, as the word suggests, is a junction, right? Or a meeting point between what? Between, it's there in the word itself, right? You split neuro and you split muscular. So it's the point where a neuron meets a muscle fiber or a muscle tissue. Okay, that place is called a neuromuscular junction. Okay, that same thing is written in words, is where a muscle fiber comes in contact with a motor neuron carrying nerve impulses from the central nervous system. Don't worry about these terms, we will come to motor neuron, central nervous system, etc. All of that in a bit. Okay? But for now, you just need to know that neuromuscular junction is a point where the neuron and the muscle fiber meet. Right? Junction is basically a meeting place of 2 points, right? Two or more points. Okay. Yeah. So in this diagram also they've shown you that the axon of a motor neuron is here, and this place where it meets the muscle fiber is called a neuromuscular junction. Here I made it in green. Right. Myofibrils are nothing but part of the muscle fiber. You don't need to remember anything about it at this stage. Okay. Okay. Shall we go ahead? Are you done writing?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So neuromuscular junction. Yes. This is the same definition as is there in the previous slide. It's the same point. You can just ignore it, right? So this is the important part. So if I were to show you a synapse diagram, this is how it actually looks like, right? There are vesicles here, right? And these vesicles, they get released and they transmit chemicals, and these chemicals are taken up by this and they move like this, right? So this is what happens in a synapse. Okay. So the nerve impulse is sent across the synaptic cleft with the help of neurotransmitters. What are neurotransmitters? They are basically molecules used by the nervous system to transmit messages between neurons or from neurons to muscles, right? So these basically become chemicals, right? And what is the most common chemical which is used or which is transmitted is acetylcholine, right? Be careful of the spellings here. I think last time I noticed that most of you wrote the spelling of acetylcholine wrong. I don't know why, but yeah, be careful. These scientific terms carry a lot of marks. So even if you've exchanged one letter here and there, you will lose your marks, right? The spelling is acetyl and then choline. Okay, so basically neurotransmitters are nothing but molecules used by the nervous system to transmit messages. So electrical impulses actually carried, or signals are actually carried in the nervous system in the form of electrical and chemical. Okay, this is how they both play a role in carrying signals or carrying messages in the nervous system. We'll just come to it how it works, right? If you're done writing this, let me know. We'll watch that video. Done? Okay, Aditya says done. Done? Okay, Raghav also says done. Done. Good, good. Just 1 second, I'll just share my screen again. I don't think I enabled. Just 1 second, it is loading.
Subscribe to our channel. Press the bell icon. In this video, we are going to learn about the neuron. First,
Are you able to hear the video? Is everything clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
let us see the different parts of a neuron. Here we have a diagram of neuron. Let us identify the different parts of the neuron by labeling them. This is cell body. These are dendrites. And this is the axon. And these are the nerve terminals or nerve endings. Here this is the cell body of the neuron. We can observe a nucleus in the cell body. So cell body has a nucleus. And we can also observe some branches that are arising from the cell body. These branch-like structures arising from the cell body are called dendrites. Here we find a long fiber extending from the cell body. This long fiber is called axon. At the end of the axon, we will find some small branches called as nerve endings. So the tips of the axon are called nerve endings or nerve terminals. Now let's see how the nerve cell functions. What is its role? What is its function? How do these nerve cells help us? Nerve cells help us in transmission of information from one part to another part of our body. Let us understand this with the help of an example. We see an object with our eyes. The visual information of that object is to be carried to our brain to recognize that object. Then how the information is carried from eye to brain. That is by nerve cells. The dendrites of the neuron receive the information. The axon passes the information to the next neuron. When the dendrites of a neuron receives the information, they start a chemical reaction that generates an electric impulse. This electric impulse travels from the dendrite to the cell body and then along the axon and finally reaches the nerve endings. The nerve endings are not directly connected to the other neuron because there is some gap between one nerve cell and the other nerve cell. So this gap, this junction is called a synapse. Here is a question. If the neurons are not connected to one another, then how the electrical impulses pass from one neuron to another neuron? Let's see. At the ending of the axon, that is, at the site of nerve endings, the electrical impulses triggers the release of some chemicals. That means the electric impulse is converted to some chemical. These chemicals, they cross the gap. They reach the dendrite of next neuron. So there they create similar electrical impulse. When these chemicals reach the dendrite of next neuron, there a similar electric impulse is created. This electrical impulse passes from the dendrite to the axon.
So like I was mentioning, the neurons are like in a chain like this. Of course, it's not just linear. There would be more neurons on the right, left, right. It would be a complex network, right? It's not just a straight line connecting one end to the other. Okay, but the main important part is this part where this is how it looks like, how a gap is, or how the synapse looks like, and this is how it the electric impulse is converted to chemicals, the chemical mainly being acetylcholine, and how that is taken up by the second neuron or the dendrite of the second neuron and converted back to electrical impulse and transmitted ahead. So that was the most important part here, right? Okay, yeah. Okay, there is one more one more video about this also. This I found today. I think the other batch might not have seen it, so I'll just play that. It's a very interesting video. Okay. I'll just show you a part of it, not the complete video, because yeah, there is extra information in it. So maybe what you can do is after class, I'll send it on the group. You can watch it after class. It's a nice one. It's if you're interested in actually understanding how electrical impulses or how does the chemical electrical interaction actually happen. This is really interesting one. Okay, it's a TED-Ed video. So TED-Ed ones are 1 second. It is
Activity spreads along the nerve's membrane, while potassium ion channel, which prevents
right. All the part which is explained is a little bit advanced. Chemical and the chemical to electrical changes keep synapse, which is what I wanted to. Yeah, here it is. Synapse part is here. Oh, voice is breaking. Is my voice breaking? Is it clear? Not clear?
Your
Some
voice,
videos, bro.
your voice.
Oh, video's voice is breaking. Acha, acha. Okay. Okay. Yeah. It must be loading. It will come correctly now. Wait.
of the spinal cord to be processed and then transmitted up to the brain. Or the nerve's target may be another organ, such as a muscle. When the electrical impulse reaches the end of the nerve,
Yeah, this is what I was trying to show you, right? Perfect now, right? Okay, yeah. So this is the only part I'm trying to show because the other parts might seem a little too advanced right now. So, okay, yeah. This is how the synapse looks like. So this is how it comes in the form of vesicle. ACH is nothing but acetylcholine, right? And he's telling you how it moves. Okay, I'll just play it.
Small vesicles or packets containing chemical neurotransmitters are released by the nerve and rapidly interact with the nerve's target. This process is called synaptic transmission because the connection between the nerve and the next object in the chain is called a synapse. And it is here, in the synapse, that the neuron's electrical information can be modulated, amplified, blocked altogether, or translated to another informational process.
I'll send this video on the group. If in case you're interested in knowing more about how, how exactly it happens, you can watch this one. Right, a little bit advanced, but yeah, it's fun to know about, right? So basically, the electrical to chemical change which is happening happens at the synapse, which happens, which happens basically in the gap between the two neurons, right? Okay. Coming back to our PPT. Okay. Now this is interesting. How do we detect stimulus, right? So the entire process which we saw in the video, or the entire thing from start to finish. Start to finish means that, suppose take an example that I have brought a hot cup near you, near your hand, or there is a hot cup near your hand. Okay, and suppose this is your hand, right? Sorry for the weird diagram. Okay, so start to finish refers to the fact that the receptors here on your hand detect this signal, right? They detect this, which is one. They send it all the way, right, to one of the central nervous system or to one of the control centers, right? And then information is being brought, or some kind of message is brought back to your hand, asking it to move away, right? To move away from this object. Right, so this is the whole procedure which happens, which is given in the form of words here, and which we also saw in the video, right? So the receptors detect the information. This information is acquired at the dendritic tip, right, passed on, which creates a chemical reaction, and then it creates an electrical impulse, right? This chemical electrical uh, reaction which keeps happening, you might study a bit more about this if you take up bio after 12th, right? If you take up pure sciences, or you take up any sciences which has biology, or anything which has biology, you might learn about this, where you might learn about they are basically sodium and potassium pumps. They are called sodium potassium pumps. These two are the ones which help in creating electrical impulses, which actually help in movement of muscles and a lot of other things, right? So these two are the main ones which are responsible for all the kind of uptake or movement or anything which is happening in your body, right? Okay. At this stage, it's sufficient for you to know that there is a mixture of electrical and chemical reactions happening. Okay, so the impulse travels from dendrite to cell body and then along axon. At the end of the axon, the chemicals are released, right? These some chemicals, now you are well aware of it, it's nothing but acetyl choline. Okay, this is the correct spelling, or neurotransmitters. Okay. So these chemicals then cross the gap or the synapse and start a similar reaction in the, or similar electrical impulse in the dendrite of the next neuron. So this keeps happening till your body has sent back the message saying that you need to move your hand, right? That this whole process will happen throughout. Okay, shall we go ahead? Done?
Ma'am, one second.
Yeah. You can take down all these points in your own words, since I'm definitely going to be sharing the PPT with you, right? So just write it in your own words so that you learn how to take notes also, and you have key points ready when you want to just do a quick revision. Done? Done. Okay. Okay, so now at this stage in the NCRT, they have directly jumped into reflex action. But before we go into that, I just want to give you a brief idea about the nervous system or the different parts of the nervous system in humans, right? Once you understand this, it becomes easier to understand reflex arc and reflex action. Of course, this is also covered in the NCRT, but it's done later or it's not in a proper format. So, which is why I've just jumbled it a little, making it easier for you to understand, right? Okay. So, the nervous system is broadly divided into two parts, right? One is the central nervous system or the CNS, and the other is the peripheral nervous system or the PNS. Okay, it's called the PNS. I will write it here. And this is the CNS written here. CNS mainly comprises of brain and spinal cord, whereas the peripheral nervous system has a little bit more subdivisions. These all are not really important. These subdivisions are not very important because this chapter focuses mainly on brain spinal cord itself, and then we just switch over to endocrine glands, right? We don't really talk about PNS in detail. But all you need to know is that peripheral nervous system basically comprises of all the nerves, nervous tissue, etc., which carries the messages to and from the brain and spinal cord, right? So all the other accessories you could call peripheral or become something which is on the surrounding or on the uh, edges, right? So that becomes that would be all the nervous system or the nervous tissue in your receptor cells near the sense organs, etc. Okay? Only brain and the spinal cord are a major part of the CNS, right? Everything which connects uh, brain to your muscle, brain to your motor nerves, etc. All those things become a part of the PNS. Okay? And PNS, of course, has more functions where it controls both involuntary and voluntary muscles, right? And in involuntary, you have parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system, which these both come under the category of fight or flight response, right? I'm not sure if you would have heard this. There is something called a fight or flight response which happens in your body, which is mainly triggered by this hormone called adrenaline. We'll come to it in a bit when we do endocrine glands tomorrow. We will be talking about adrenaline, right? This is the rush or this is the feeling you get when you're, let's say, you're doing something adventurous. Adventurous would be maybe something like jumping on a trampoline, you know, or going paragliding, okay, those kind of things. Jumping from, let's say, a height if you're swimming. I don't know, and if you swim here, if you jump a little bit from a height, maybe like, um, yeah, some kind of a height from that diving board, you feel some kind of a sensation in your, yeah, that I don't know how to put it in words, right? So basically, yeah, you will experience this. That is called the adrenaline rush, or it's basically the fight or flight response which is triggered, wherein your body will either decide to fight that response or it will decide to flee, which is nothing but flight, right? Here, flight basically means run away, not fly as in fly away. It is flee or running away. Okay? So that these are all the job of the PNS, right? Again, you don't have most of it in detail right now. When we discuss adrenaline, we might discuss a little bit about these two, but you don't need to know anything about these two. Okay. Okay, so this is clear what is CNS and what is PNS, right? CNS has brain and spinal cord, whereas peripheral is what helps. Okay, so now based on that, you have three major types of neurons. The main being sensory, motor, and relay or connector, or all these are the different nerves names for that neuron. Right? Again, take this down. This is important. This knowledge will be helpful in understanding the reflex action or the reflex arc. right? Without this, it becomes a little confusing. So sensory neurons or receptor neurons, or these are also called effector neurons, are what transmit the impulse from the sensory cells to the CNS, right? Sensory cells being all the your five sense organs: ear, nose, tongue, eyes, skin. Okay. Oh, my voice is cracking. Is it? Am I not audible?
We are
No,
audible.
it's not cracking.
Okay. Okay. ठीक है. Just check your connection then once. Okay. ठीक है. Yeah, so sensory are the ones which are transmit impulse from sensory to CNS. So CNS here would be both brain and spinal cord, right? Depending on the situation. Whereas you have motor neurons or effector neurons which transmit the impulse from the CNS to muscle cells, right? Again, this would be both brain and spinal cord, depending on the situation or depending on where it is going from, right? Okay, and there are connector neurons in between, which are called relay or connector or association or interneurons, right? These are the links between these two neurons. Okay, ठीक है. You can understand what a relay connector is by, I think I gave this example to one of the batches. Yeah, in sports day, I think you would have played something called a relay race. Have you played relay races? Yes, no? No? You haven't played relay race, any of you? What happened? Nobody's answering. Okay, Raghav says yes, ma'am. No, you haven't played? Okay, I'll explain what it is. Okay, if you would have participated in sports days, this is one of the common activities, right? Which happens, which is called a relay race. I'm writing the word here. So what happens is there are 3 to 4 people in a team, right? And they are made to stand at different points, like these people standing here. Point A, point B, point C, right? So person walks from here and reaches this point, then passes on either some kind of uh, some kind of a token or some kind of just give a clap or something like that, and then you go ahead, right? Then this person goes ahead and moves till here, then passes it on to this person, and then this person will run, right? This is what happens in a relay race. Okay, you can use this analogy to understand what a relay neuron is. So suppose this is your sensory neuron. Okay, I'm just writing S, and this is your motor neuron, right? So the relay neuron is the one in between, the one which connects the sensory and the motor one together, right? That's why the name relay has actually come in both the situations. Okay, so basically whatever message has been given to the sensory neuron, it's passed on to this relay neuron. I'll write as R. Then this relay neuron gives it off to the motor neuron, which then passes it on to the muscle and invokes a final response. Okay. ठीक है. Done. Shall we go ahead to the next slide?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now we come to the important part, which is reflex action, right? So I think in the chapter, the only topic where you are asked flowcharts or you're asked to give a 2 to 3 mark answer is this topic, right? Which is reflex action, which if you understood the previous slide is just nothing else. It's just writing all that into words. Okay. So yeah, it is a simplest form of response in the nervous system. What is the definition? This second point would be your definition, right? A reflex or reflex action is a rapid automatic response to a stimulus which is not under the voluntary control of the Brain. This is very important, right? Brain is not involved in reflex action. Okay? Because there's no time for you to think and process anything. It's an involuntary action or an involuntary response which happens.
Ma'am,
Yes?
ma'am, in the eighth grade, we have studied that the reflex actions above the neck, so the head region, is controlled by the brain, and below that's the spinal cord. So doesn't oppose this statement.
Yeah, what you are saying, it becomes correct, but then there is, how should I put it? That there are certain centers in the brain which do the same job like the spinal cord. Okay, there are certain places or certain lobes, or how should I put it? Okay, certain parts of the brain which are solely dedicated to reflex actions, which is what you are saying for the reflex actions which happen above the neck, right? Those parts are the ones responsible. So for reflex action, or the basic logic which happens is shortest distance is what you're trying to look at, right? It's the concept of displacement, if you would know in physics, right? So reflex action is nothing but the same concept of displacement, where your body is going to find the shortest route. So suppose if it's from your hand to the spinal cord, the shortest route becomes the spinal cord, right? Whereas if it is something above your head itself, right? So above the neck is only the regions in the head. So the brain itself becomes the quickest route there. So there are some centers in the brain which are reserved only for taking care of this. Okay, so it's actually both the statements are correct, because the brain, you're not processing anything, that's why it's not under the control of the brain, right? Whereas these same centers are there on top, that's why above the neck the brain takes care of it. So both the statements are correct. Okay. Okay, yeah. So okay, if you are finding it hard to remember as voluntary control of the brain, you can write it as no thinking is involved. Yeah, that would be a better word then. Okay, you can write this next to that point itself and star mark it. Basically, no thinking is involved, no thinking thought process is involved. It is an involuntary action. Okay, examples are, some of the examples are here, like your diaphragm moving during respiration, coughing. So all these becomes debatable issues. Coughing, yawning, and even breathing become debatable topics, because sometimes you're able to control them, right? So they are, yeah, but still they come under reflex actions. Sneezing and blinking also. Yeah, even blinking becomes debatable. Yeah, I was searching for that. Right? Debatable in the sense that if I tell you that, uh, blink your eyes, or notice how many times you're blinking your eyes in a minute. Suddenly you'll start feeling that you're able to control it, right? But all the other times it's actually happening involuntarily. Right? That is why I'm saying that it's a debatable topic. Okay. Yeah. So these are some of the examples. Knee-jerk reaction is what happens when this is a test actually used to measure the mobility in your legs. Okay, that's what is a knee-jerk. Basically, a small instrument, a hammer-like instrument. It looks like this.
Ma'am, isn't that used to like see if the leg is has any stimuli, or has if it's paralyzed or not?
Yes, exactly. Yes, it's used for the same thing. So there is this small instrument. It looks like a triangle-headed thing with a rod here, right? So this triangle is a headed thing is usually soft, but not that soft that it would bend or something. It's enough to poke you and poke the nerves, basically. Just check if, just like Raghav said, to check if your limbs are paralyzed or not. Okay, that's a knee-jerk reaction. Okay, and yes, you have the flow chart here. Sometimes they ask you a flow chart to depict the reflex action. So this is how it works. I have discussed it in the previous slide also, and I think it is fairly clear now, right? So the stimulus is received by the receptor. So these would be your sensory neurons, right? Now you can connect the type of neurons to this. Then that impulse travels to your spinal cord where the relay neurons are present, and they pass it on to the motor neurons, which then send off the final impulse or what needs to be done to the effector, which is nothing but the muscle or the gland. Right? This is a basic flow chart. Okay, shall we go ahead? Okay. Yeah, now we come to what is known as the reflex arc, right? So the reflex arc is nothing but the pathway. The action is different and the pathway is different. The pathway is called the arc, whereas the reflex action is, yeah, the same name, or you can just call it reflex, right? They allow rapid response. Again, if you are somebody who can who remembers things better by analogy, you can call reflex arc as the displacement here, right? The shortest distance. Okay. So the peripheral nervous system, or the PNS, and the spinal cord are involved here, right? Brain is not involved. Okay. Reflex arc can be represented as follows. Again, the same flowchart has been written in words. So just take this down. Okay. Take a note of this because it's asked in question. Sometimes they just ask you, write the reflex arc for, let's say, knee-jerk reaction, right? They might just give you an example and you would need to write this. So this is the exact thing you have to write. Again, nothing to explain here. The flowchart in the previous slide has been put in words, that's all. And response is basically the final effect or the final thing which happens. Right? That's what a response is. Done? Shall we go ahead? Yes. Okay, sir. Go ahead. So this is the diagram for a reflex arc, right? Again, you don't need to, just 1 second. Yeah, you don't need to draw this right now. It's there in the NCERT. It's the same diagram, right? Okay. But usually this diagram is asked when they used to take proper exams. Right now, I'm not sure what happens to all the paper pattern, etc. We'll be more clear in August. Probably they'll come out with detailed guidelines, right? Be clear by next month. Okay, so this is the sensory neuron, right? Till here, relay neuron is always in the spinal cord or in the brain or wherever the sensory and motor neuron meet, right? That would be either spinal cord or the brain. This is the relay neuron and this is your motor neuron, and the effector is usually the muscle or the gland, right? Why gland is because does your body need to release any hormones, right? For that gland also. Right, that would happen in the case of fight or flight or something like that, wherein there is some kind of stimuli and you know adrenaline or other kinds of hormone need to be regulated, released, etc. Right. This is a classic diagram, usually asked just as it is. They might just change this object here to maybe a hot iron or to something else. Right. Okay. Okay, yeah, these are some of the examples of reflex arc, right? Like when you touch a hot object, or shivering when it's too cold, sweating when it's too hot, right? Dilation of the pupils to look in the dark and vice versa. Okay, when you smell your favorite dish, your mouth waters. This example is usually, I think, commonly seen in papers, etc. Right? These are some of the examples. Also, there are two videos. One I think is by the Khan Academy, and one is I don't remember now whose it was. They have explained reflex arc only again in very simple words and in detail. So maybe like after class, maybe you can watch it, or when I share the PPT, you can always just watch these videos in case you want to, you know, yeah, in case you feel like you're bored of theory, you can watch these videos and catch up. Okay. This part here on the right hand side is important. Important why, as in these give you the reasons why the reflex arc is important, or why there is no involvement of the brain, right? Or no involvement of thinking process, right? So these 4 points are exactly as is given in the NCRT. I'll just shorten it and tell you which are important, right? So reflex arc have evolved in animals because the thinking process of the brain is not fast enough. It's you take time to process something and then come up with a logical answer. So when there is sudden change in environment which is dangerous, it's not really feasible for us to take up that much time to think over it, right? Okay. So because of that, reflex arcs have evolved. So in fact, many animals don't even possess the complex neural network which we have for thinking, right? It's lacking in many animals. So which is why the reflex arc evolved as efficient ways of functioning in the absence of true thought processes, right? Or basically in the absence of thinking, right? But we've also noticed or realized that even after complex neural networks came into existence, reflex arcs continued to be more efficient for quick responses. I mean, the time taken to give a response via the reflex arc is still going to be very less as compared to when you resort to thinking about it, right? Okay. It's something like this. Suppose, just as an example, suppose the place where you're at is burning, right? Where you're sitting, there is a fire there. If you sit and think about it, it takes time to process that there is a fire and that you need to move out of there. It takes a long time for all those activities to register and happen one after the other. Whereas thanks to reflex arc, what happens is the minute you see fire or you see something, even at far, if you notice a little something dangerous, your first reaction is to run away from there, right? That's the first response, right? All those responses or that reaction which we have today is because of reflex arc, right? And not because we've thought, or there could be situations like you wouldn't have even seen before when you travel to, like, maybe say heights, or you go to mountain peaks, mountain top, something like that, right? Or you are standing at a height of let's say a rooftop or something like that. It might be your first time also. It might not. It might be some activities you've not done before, right? But still you already know that you should not go very close, or this is dangerous, right? This is because of reflex arc, not because our brain has been programmed or it knows that this is dangerous, right? I don't know if I'm making sense. I just try to give some example. Okay, so from here the important part, you can write these parts that thinking process is not fast enough, right? This becomes point number 1. And then right many animals have very little or none of the network needed for thinking, becomes 2, right? uh, right, therefore they turned out to be efficient ways of functioning, right? And even after they came into existence, they remain to be quick responses. So this becomes point number 4. This much is enough. Complete sentences are not required. This much is enough. Right? Okay, shall we go to the next slide? Done. Now we are left with only majority of the part in this chapter is just theory. I mean, there is nothing which I can explain further or what should I say, which I can make it easier or simpler for you. It's just theory because you need to know functions and parts of the brain, functions of spinal cord, functions of PNS, then control and coordination in plants, plant hormones and animal hormones, right? So it's just theory, structure function or location function, etc. Okay. Okay, shall we go ahead? Nobody is answering.
Yes, we move it.
Yes? Okay. Okay, now we come to the brain, right? Okay. Again, like I said, this is now, it is just more of information for you, new information, right? New words, new information, not much to explain. Okay, brain is the highest coordinating center in the body, right? It's located inside the skull at the top of the spinal cord. It's protected in a bony box called cranium, or it's also known as the brain box, right? This word is important, cranium or brain box. And how is it protected? So if you ask me a question, or if you're asked the question that how is your brain protected, right? So you write the following: it's placed inside the cranium or the brain box. And the second point would be it has three membranes called meninges, and the space between the membrane is filled with CSF. So CSF basically absorbs any kind of shocks, right? Suppose you banged your head somewhere, even a little bit. That impact is taken up all by CSF. It acts like a cushion. Okay? Yeah, that protects the brain from mechanical shocks. This is CSF. It's short for cerebrospinal fluid, right? Brain is surrounded by three membranes called meninges, right? And there is a condition where the meninges get inflamed.
Ma'am,
Yes.
what is CSF? Can you please tell again?
Yes, CSF is nothing but cerebrospinal fluid.
Okay.
Here, it's there in the, what point is this? Fifth point. Okay. So there is this condition. It's a little serious condition which occurs where the membrane of the brain gets inflamed. Inflamed is basically it gets swollen, or there is some issues with it, right? It gets swollen and it becomes very painful, and that condition is what is called as meningitis. This is also asked as a question. Sometimes it's a HOTS question, right? Higher order thinking skill question. It's asked even in your Olympiads, or I don't know if you prepare for Olympiads or something like that. This question is asked. Famous question there, right? Okay. So for that, you just need to know meninges. If you remember meninges, you'll connect the two, that meningitis is definitely the swelling. Okay. Anything which swells up becomes itis. If you've heard, I don't know, if you visit the dentist frequently, do you all go to the dentist frequently? No, yes.
No, ma'am.
No? Okay. Okay. In case any of you have visited the dentist, right? Or in case if you are having some teeth related issues and all, you might have heard this term where they say it's called gingivitis. It's the inflammation of your gums, right? You can't really see it because they look just the same, right? You will not be able to notice any difference between normal gums and swollen gums. But yeah, whenever you are trying to get your tooth extracted or your tooth removed, etc., or something being done there, this happens along with it. So it's called gingivitis. So wherever you see an itis, it's always some kind of inflammation, right? Okay, I just went off course just to tell you that. At least in bio, you should always keep connecting words because they have a common root word, right? Most of the words are the same. Like itis would be inflammation, or membranes would be called lemma, something like that, right? Okay. Okay, yeah. So this is all you need to remember, and that yeah, there are pairs of nerves which arise from the brain, and brain is always called anything related to the brain starts with cranium, cranial. Okay, so cranium, that's why it's the brain box. Cranial becomes any nerves which coming out of the brain become the cranial nerves, right? Whereas if the nerves are coming out from the spine, it would become spinal nerves, right? Okay. Okay, take a note of this question also, that how is your brain protected? This is frequently asked. How is the brain and spinal cord protected? Both are frequently asked. The spinal cord is also the same. Meninges run throughout the spinal cord as well. And there is CSF, which is present in between those membranes. So these 2 points become same for spinal cord and brain. But only brain has the cranium or the brain box, right? Okay. Do you all watch any of these doctor related serials? Any of you? I don't know. What do you all watch usually? Raghav says yes.
Yes, ma'am.
What do you watch, Raghav? Which one?
Ma'am, I finished The Good Doctor and I've seen House MD.
Oh, you've seen House. Okay, okay, okay. Yeah. Okay, good. What about others? Do you all watch anything related to medical stuff? Oh, Mansi is
Ma'am,
also watched
same.
Doctor House. Who said same? I didn't missed your name.
Me, Anil, good doctor and house MD.
Okay, good, good. Oh, nice. It's interesting to see that you all are watching House. That's okay. Kevan surprise, but interesting. Good, good. Nice. Nobody's watching Grey's Anatomy. I expected Grey's Anatomy people to
Means
be.
that is too
Ma'am,
long
that's
actually.
that's too long, yeah, and then it doesn't have a lot of medicine in it. I've heard
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
but
lot of
I expected you all to be watching that. I agree, agree. It's too long. B, people keep dying. It becomes very sad. But medicine related wise, I think Grey's Anatomy explains it better than House. Like House has only complicated things which pop up, right? Like one or two conditions which keep popping up all the time. Whereas Grey's Anatomy, there is some array, like the kind of tests being done or those kind of things, there are many. Okay, I hope you're not going to use this as an excuse to watch that. I'm just, um, I just tried to relate this to maybe something you're watching or studying, right? Okay. Oh, Raghav, your sister studying to become a doctor. Oh, nice, nice. Okay. Yeah, so in case you would have watched Dr. House, in that they do these kind of tests, right? They do a biopsy. You would have heard this term called a biopsy, where biopsies basically they take a part of your tissue out, okay, to test if for generally cancer or tumor conditions, but also other conditions as well. So there is one of the tests which they do, which is the bone marrow test, where they literally pull in and poke a needle in your spine, right? That needle is very huge. It's this long, right? And they poke it into your spine and they basically check what is nothing but your CSF, right? They check that if there is any issue in the CSF, they check that and then Yeah. Okay. I just try to connect 2-3 things. In case you don't watch any medical related issues, don't worry, you're not missing out on anything. I just thought that I could connect 1 or 2 terms here and there so that it would make it interesting for you also. Okay. Okay, moving on, let us move on to the parts of the brain. Right, again, this is the same picture from NCERT as it is. Sometimes it used to be asked, again, I'm not sure what happens now, but this diagram used to be asked, and on YouTube there are a couple of videos, like there are people who explain or they teach you how to draw these diagrams. I mean, in case you want, you can check those out, right? I don't think they're giving you any simple method, but they're just showing you where to start and how to start drawing all these complicated diagrams. Okay, so in the brain, you need to know that the brain has 3 main parts: the forebrain, midbrain, and the hindbrain. The hindbrain is further divided into 3 parts called the pons, medulla, and cerebellum. Right? Okay, hindbrain becomes the major or the main controlling center, because any injury to medulla oblongata can be fatal, right? If your cerebellum and pons stop functioning, it is near fatal, right? Okay. Hypothalamus and pituitary will come
Ma'am,
when we
isn't
do.
medulla for all the involuntary movement and
Yes, yes,
movements of the body, right?
yes, perfect. Medulla controls all the involuntary functions, and also medulla is the connection between the brain and the spinal cord, right? That's why they say that if you are hurt at the back of your neck, it is always fatal, right? Because the medulla cannot really recover, or it cannot really sustain any injuries. It's a weak part. Okay. 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 Yeah. So basically, you need to know forebrain, midbrain, and hindbrain, right? Pituitary will come to when we do endocrine glands, right? And this is the cranium or the brain box, skull, right? And what else is left? Yeah, cerebrum is also another word for forebrain, right? So forebrain is divided into lobes, etc., like parietal, frontal, occipital, right? But you don't need to get into that now. At this stage, it's just these 3, right? And spinal cord as well. Okay, let us quickly go on to the functions. Yeah, this is just a flow chart. I mean, not required to be noted down. Not at all required to be noted down, because there are extra terms. Just a flowchart to show where what comes, right? Okay. You don't need to worry about diencephalon. You don't have anything related to it. Okay. Okay. Yeah, this is where I think we stopped with the first batch also, right? So now you can pick up.
Yeah, ma'am, we have completed cerebrum. From the
Hindbrain.
next question.
Yes.
We completed cerebrum.
Yes, yes. Okay, okay. Yes. So yeah, we had stopped here. So from here we'll pick up quickly. I will go ahead a little bit, and if possible, I'll try to complete. Let's see how much I can complete. Let's. Okay. So cerebrum or the forebrain is divided into 2 cerebral hemispheres, right? They are connected to each other. So it's also called the right brain, left brain, right? I don't know if you watch or if you read about learning abilities, or the right brain and left brain are usually divided based on how well you are artistic, or you're good into writing and things like that, right? So if you're artistic or if you're creative, you're supposed to, they say that your left brain is more active, right? Whereas if you're good with numbers, if you're good at analytical skills, they say your right brain is more active. Like that, there are regions for language development, for a lot of things. So a lot of activities that we do, right, which is, yeah, which is given in the last point here also, right? Personality, memory, intelligence, reasoning, learning, creativity, etc., all these, there are fixed parts in the brain which control that, right? All this if you pursue bio further, if you take up neuroscience, you might learn all those things in detail, right? This is just to tell you that how important the brain is, right? Okay. So it's divided into two cerebral hemispheres which are connected by corpus callosum. Again, just a word I'm informing you about because I'm not sure if they ask or not. If they do, you should know that it is corpus callosum. The walls have an outer cortex and an inner medulla, and so this is how a CS of a brain would look like, right? There is, I don't have gray color, so I'm drawing in black, right? So there is material like this here, or matter it's called, okay, like this, and there is white may here. Okay, there is white matter inside this gray matter, right? So this is like a slice of your brain. If you slice your brain, this is what you will see. There will be gray matter at the sides and white matter in the center. Okay, and gray matter is usually the one where all your neurons or all the processing actually occurs. Okay, and white matter consists of more of the relay neurons, or its main job is just to connect gray matter parts and just transfer things here and there, right? So white matter does not really play an important role. Gray matter plays an important role in processing. Okay, and I don't know if you've heard about these terms called IQ, EQ, etc. Have you heard about IQ? Intelligence quotient.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yeah, you I told your last class. What about the others?
Ma'am, IQ is intelligence quotient, suicide, and EQ is emotional quotient.
Yeah, yeah. So I don't know if you've heard, there are these tests, right? These tests which are there to measure your IQ, right? All the famous people or the geniuses like Einstein, etc. They are said to have very good IQ. Okay. Yeah, there's, I think it's called Mensa. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Once he said, "Good, y'all remember whatever I told last class. I'm glad. I thought my lectures might be a bit boring because there's so much theory." Good, good. I'm glad. Okay. Yeah. So there's this test called Mensa test. You can look it up. You can do Google. Find out.
Ma'am,
Read
is it
about.
Mensa test? Because Mensa is the group of it's a group of people who have a IQ above, I think, 1500. I'm not sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So they are the ones who hold the test. I think. Yeah, they are the
Oh,
authority. I think it's called Mensa. I'm not 100% sure, but if my memory serves right, I think it's called Mensa itself. So yeah, Raghav, you're correct. There is this group of individuals with very high IQ, right? Who are a part of a, it's called a society or a club, right? Yeah, yeah. There are geniuses. There are young kids also in that. There are, I think recently also they found 2 3 people
ma'am,
who
a
were.
4-year-old Indian girl.
Oh, is it 4 year old? I think the last I had read was 7 year old somebody, but oh wow, it's gone to 4 years also now. Okay, yeah. So yeah, they take this test. So yeah, if you're interested, you can just Google and you can just take a try at those tests and see how your IQ is, etc. Just out of curiosity, you don't have to do anything, right? Okay. Okay. Yeah. So all that, so gray matter has all the neurons, and gray matter is the one which helps in this IQ and all that. So basically you're measuring the amounts of neurons being fired in the gray matter, or that's what contributes to your intelligence quotient, right? That's what helps you think better. Okay. So yeah, cerebrum is the main thinking part of the brain. The last part is the functions. Oh, okay. Yeah, these are the functions, right? It's a site of faculties. Faculties here basically means the different senses. Okay, it's not teachers. Okay, faculties are the different centers for different things like reasoning, learning, intelligence, personality, memory, etc. All that. All our thoughts, etc., are controlled by cerebrum. So cerebrum has a lot of functions. Like I said, it's divided into lobes, etc., and each lobe has its own specific function. So because you don't have all that right now, what they've done is they just clubbed all the functions of all the lobes and put it under one point, right? Okay, so it's not like haphazardly controlled like it's mentioned here. So each part in the cerebrum also has a specific part. So learning is controlled by, let's say, this part. Memory is controlled by this part. Your reasoning skills is controlled by this part, right? It's very detailed. Okay. Okay. ठीक है. Next, let us move on to the next slide.
Ma'am,
Okay.
imagination also is a like, part of cerebrum, no?
Yes, imagination also. Yes. So yeah, definitely there would be maybe more functions more than what is mentioned here, right? Like I said, this is just broad overview, so we've just clubbed important functions under one. Okay. 11, 12, I'm not sure. 11, 12, I think it's you go off into a different segment altogether. You just leave human anatomy. I think you don't really revisit human anatomy in detail in 11, 12. I'm not sure though. So yeah, I don't think you'll cover this part again. Yeah, done copying this. Shall we go ahead? Done. Okay. Okay, yeah, midbrain controls. Oh god, what is this? Why is there no? This is reflex, okay, not rex movements. Okay, the midbrain controls the reflex movement, right? So here, Raga, what you were mentioning that time, this part would be controlling your reflex actions, right? Like you said, it does control, right? And there is no thinking involved. So the midbrain usually just connects forebrain and hindbrain, and it's involved in reflex actions. It does not have any other function. Okay.
Isn't
Right.
it the cerebellum?
Cerebellum is the little brain. Cerebellum is
Yes, ma'am, but
has
then
more.
isn't
It
it the part of the midbrain?
no. Cerebellum comes below. Okay, let me just go back to that.
Hindbrain as a part of.
It's actually behind here. So midbrain is here, whereas the cerebellum is here. I think you're
Okay.
getting confused because in the earlier years we used to remember parts of the brain as cerebrum, cerebellum, and medulla oblongata, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So many people even get confused with that. Yeah, but no, they are different parts. Okay. Yeah, so the midbrain controls reflex movements. These all reflex actions it controls, right? Visual, auditory. Auditory refers to sound. This is sound. Another word for sound is auditory. Okay, it also controls eye muscles, etc. Right? Okay, basically reflex action. Remember like that. Okay, and now coming to hindbrain. Hindbrain, we have three important subparts. One is pons varoli, right? Careful of the spelling. There is a double I. Okay, it helps in regulating respiration, right? It has other functions also, but right now just remembering this is sufficient. Cerebellum helps in maintaining posture and balance. Yeah, cerebellum is also called the tiny brain, right? And it is important, very important. Medulla oblongata and cerebellum both are really important. Any blow to the back of your head, that's why becomes fatal, right? Okay, damaging either of those. Medulla oblongata, like you all already gave me a few examples, here are the remaining ones, right? What all it does. All involuntary actions it controls, blood pressure, peristalsis, right? Controlling center for reflexes like swallowing, sneezing, etc., right? It continues behind the brain as the spinal cord, or it's also called the part which joins the brain to the spinal cord, right? Okay. Again, nothing much to explain. You can just write this down.
Ma'am, can you please go back to midbrain for a second?
Yeah, I will. Once they are done with this, I'll go back. Are you all done writing this?
No.
No? Okay, okay. Right,
No,
right.
ma'am.
Back. Done?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I'm going back to midbrain here, Aditya.
Ma'am,
This is reflex, huh? Not rex. Just change that. Yes, tell me, Alina.
ma'am, when someone has a headache or a migraine, which part of the brain gets affected during that?
Okay. That again, that is a very broad category because headaches can be of different types, right? Sometimes it's cold related headache. Sometimes it is because of your posture. Sometimes it's because of what is called stress, right? Those kind of headaches are called tension headaches. And sometimes it's also because your meninges are inflamed. That kind of headache is unbearable, right? So you would know. But headache in general, again, depends on what type of headache you're getting, right? Migraine usually occurs at your facial muscle sides, right? It happens at the one side of your head, and yeah, you are not able to see anything, and all your senses become a little weak that time, right? As to which part actually gets affected, they are still looking into it. Like scientists are still doing research into that because they are not able to isolate any particular tissue or any particular part yet.
Okay, ma'am, thank you.
Okay. Okay, done. Shall we go to spinal cord? Okay, I have. Okay, I have this slide.
Ma'am, what time is today's class till?
That's what I was saying. That uh, I want to finish spinal cord, this slide, and this slide. Is it fine? Shall we finish it in next 5-7 minutes? Is it okay with y'all?
Ma'am, I have another class, so I won't be.
Oh, okay. Okay. What about the others? Because tomorrow also there will be a little bit extra to. I think 3 hours may it would have been done properly because it became two classes. 2 hours I had to eh, stick it in.
Ma'am,
Okay, let's just finish spinal cord. Maybe I'll do the next other two slides tomorrow. Okay, let's do that.
ma'am,
Tell me.
ma'am, I just wanted to ask that yes, on Tuesday you said that we will have 3 classes, but since one second class has been taken as revision mostly, so what are we gonna have a session for this on Tuesday also? This chapter?
I am not sure. I'm not sure. I'll let you know. It depends on how much am I able to cover tomorrow, right?
Okay.
Yes, I'm not. This Sunday, I'll be having this chapter's revision.
No idea. I'll ask. I'll check with the faculty and I'll let you know.
Probably Lois sir will be taking. He said.
Yeah. I really am not sure. I'll check with them and I'll tell you tomorrow. Okay. Okay. We'll just do spinal cord and then if you have class, you can leave. Okay. You can just take this down and then leave if anybody has class or anything. Okay, so spinal cord extends from medulla oblongata almost the whole length of the backbone and ends at the second lumbar vertebrae. Right? It's enclosed in a bony cage called vertebral column. Again, the gray matter will be on the inner side, but here it's on the inner side and white matter is on the outer side, which is why this point is mentioned. It's ulta, brain and then spinal cord. And spinal cord is responsible for reflexes below the neck. We have already discussed this. Yeah, this point I already covered, right? Meninges, they extend down also. And as many as 31 pairs of nerves arise from the spinal cord. Again, this number is not usually asked, but not sure. They may come up, right? Okay, and all spinal, the spinal cord is concerned with spinal reflex actions and the conduction of nerve impulses to and from the brain, right? That's all. That's the same part is expanded and written again into more points, right? Basically, spinal cord provides a structure, right? And posture structure, and it's the main part of the central nervous system. Major role is reflex action and transmission of impulses to and from the brain and muscles. Right. I have a few interesting videos. Most of them are these TED-Ed videos, which is like extra information. That's why I'm calling them interesting. I'll send them once class is over on the group. You can watch them, and maybe you'll feel interested to know more about what exactly happens when nerve impulses are conducted, or what exactly happens in the brain, etc. If you're done copying this, you can leave, huh? I think somebody has other classes and all. So don't forget to send your notes on the group right now itself. Right? So
This
that
last batch, there was nothing much to write, so we don't have to send it again, no?
yeah, it's okay. Don't send it again.
Ma'am, can I send it in half an hour? My mom's out.
Yeah, okay. You can do that.
Ma'am,
Yes.
Thank you, ma'am.
ma'am, actually I will be sending Tuesday's notes and today's notes by 5:30. Is that okay?
Okay. Okay,
ma'am.
so if you've taken everything down, and if you don't have any questions or anything, you can leave. Okay, see you all tomorrow. Bye bye. Send your notes on the
And
group.
ma'am,
Yes.
I just wanted to ask that this Sunday are we gonna have a physical class like last time?
Yeah, I think so. I am not sure. Whatever is there would be updated in the group by tomorrow, right? What is
Okay,
it?
ma'am.
We'll let you. Okay. Yes, Puneet, tell me.
No, ma'am.
Oh, okay. You raised your hand. I thought you had some question. Take it. Okay. See you all tomorrow. Bye bye.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye.
Thank you, ma'am.